What's up guys, welcome back to Michael's house, and in today's video I'm going to be going over how to transform a deck that looks like this to this. And not only is it going to look amazing, it's going to repel water like this, and it's going to allow you to literally blow off water with a leaf blower. If this sounds interesting to you, stick around. The process I'm going to show you today is specifically for how to get rid of your previous stain and how to reapply a new stain and seal so that you can enjoy your deck for more years to come. As you can see, my current deck has that grayish tinge, which is from UV exposure, and as you can see, the stain is peeling off in quite a few different areas. A quick overview of the steps I'll be walking through in this video. First, to remove the previous stain, we'll be using a pressure washer to do the majority of work. In my opinion, pressure washing beats sanding every day of the week. That being said, if your old stain wasn't already peeling off or severely weathered like mine was, you might need to do a more thorough sanding job. I also opted not to use a chemical stain remover because I saw a lot of these products can be corrosive and I really didn't want that product on my lawn. Next, after letting the deck dry for roughly 48 hours, I took a sanding block and manually sanded any major imperfections. And after that, I used a leaf blower to remove any major dust or debris from the sanding. And next, I was ready to apply the stain and sealer mix. The first piece of equipment I used was a pressure washer. Now, my pressure washer is capable of 3000 psi, but the sweet spot for this job is around 1000 psi, just enough to remove the old stain, wash the boards, and take off that top layer of wood. Any more than this and we risk removing too much wood, causing splinters or etching into the wood, something we don't want to do. To decrease the pressure, I used a 40-degree nozzle, which allows more flow area and thus reduces the pressure. To get your pressure washer going, the first thing you're going to want to do is turn the water on. Then you're going to want to press down the trigger on your wand so you can allow water to freely flow through there and allow any trapped air to release. Then you're going to want to turn the knob to the on position and engage the choke. And then you're going to want to pull on the drawstring a few times, and just like that, it should start up. Now that your pressure washer is up and running, you're ready to start spraying down your boards. So firstly, when you're doing this, you want to make sure you're moving the pressure washer wand along the board at a consistent pace, and ideally you don't want to stop until you reach the end of a board. Although I know that this can be difficult if your boards are quite long. Now the reason for this is anytime you stop, even if it's just for a split second, that high pressure water stream is going to etch into that wood deeper than any other area and leave spots that are visible after. The way I work is I spray the boards each with 2 consistent strokes. Firstly, the first stroke will be along the top of the board typically, and then I'll do another one along the bottom. Anytime you're at the end of a board where you need to stop, it's good practice to remove the nozzles higher up away from the board so that you don't leave a mark. Now you want to take your time when doing this. You want to move at a consistent and leisure pace. Keep in mind you can go back and sand off sections to make it look more even, but you really want to take your time with this and do the best job as you can. I'm not sure about you, but for me this was extremely satisfying to watch and definitely one of my favorite parts of the job. You definitely get the hang of it the more that you do it, so I would definitely start in a spot that isn't as visible, and then you can go into the main sections once you're a lot more comfortable. I'll show a few more clips at the end of this video in case you want to watch some more to make sure you're getting the technique down right, or if you just enjoy watching it. For now, we'll move on to the next step. Once you're all done, your deck should look something like this. You can see it's gotten a lot lighter after we removed the top layer of wood. Next, we're going to let our deck thoroughly dry for about 48 hours before we start to apply the sealer and stain. Now that you have the majority of previous stain off the deck, the last step is to sand off the remaining imperfections. Given that I didn't have that many on my deck, I took this sanding brush and I manually went around to remove any other imperfections, but I highly recommend using a electric sander if you still have quite a bit on your deck that you need to get off. This is really important to remove any dark spots or any fraying from the wood to make sure that you have a nice, clean, smooth surface before you apply the stain. Now that your deck is finally prepped and ready for sealer, we can go over the type of product I'll be using today and how I'll be applying it. The product I'll be using is from Olympic. It's a transparent stain and sealer mix. I highly recommend using this product because it is wood penetrating, so rather than just sitting on the surface of the wood, it'll actually penetrate deep to protect from moisture. And because it isn't just a topical product, it shouldn't peel or crack in the future. I'll talk more about the pros and cons of this product later in this video. To apply the sealer, I bought this 7-inch brush that can screw into a pole, and this brush allows for a lot of product to be captured with each application, and it can get the sides of the boards more effectively than a roller. Using this paintbrush setup, it really saved my back while applying this product and really sped up the entire process. I highly recommend this rather than going on your hands and knees and applying it using a regular brush. Having an extension on the brush also makes it really easy in case you missed any spots and you need to go back. Lastly, before applying the sealer, I gave my deck another cleaning just to make sure that I didn't have any leftover sawdust after the sanding. To open the product, I took a flathead screwdriver and moved around the can like so. Next, I took a paint stir stick and vigorously mixed the product. As you'll see, this is extremely important. It goes to a very dark shade compared to the reddish color it was originally. So I recommend mixing it for about 30 seconds to a minute, even if you don't think it's doing anything, to make sure that you're getting a nice homogeneous mixture. Once the can's open, you can simply dip your brush inside and start applying the product. As you'll notice, with this 7-inch brush, the can is a little bit narrow, so I'm not able to put the entire brush directly in. So later in this video, I actually got a little tray that I poured the product directly in so I could get a full dip of my brush. When applying the product, you want to have nice, even, but thin applications. You don't want to put too much in, or else it'll just sit on the top of the wood and it won't actually soak in. Take your time while doing this and make sure you're applying even coats, as because this is a transparent stain, if you apply it unevenly, you will be able to see it in the end, but it's not a big deal. Honestly, I think it looks pretty good either way. And worst comes to worst, you can apply a second coat to make sure that everything looks even. After the first few applications, this is what it's looking like. Personally, I think this is looking great. I really like the brownish color. This color is called Mountain Cedar, if you want to pick it up yourself. One tip to keep in mind, anytime you're taking sealer away from the can, and if any drips off and splatters, you want to make sure you move that around immediately, because if it dries, it'll be darker in that splattered spot and it'll definitely be noticeable later on, and you'll likely have to go for a second application to hide that. It's also best to do this when you're not in direct sunlight so that it dries more slowly and is able to dry evenly with the other sections around it. You can still apply it in direct sunlight, but you'll just need to make sure you work faster so one section doesn't completely dry before the next. Something else to keep in mind is you'll need a smaller brush to do the edges to prevent the sealer getting on the house exterior. For this, I recommend using a half-filled can if possible, and having a friend do this while you're doing the brush work so it can all dry evenly at the same time. And like I said, take your time, make sure you apply it nice and evenly, and it should turn out great. One mistake that I made while in this process is sometimes I had some splatters and I didn't immediately mix them around, and I left for a 5-10 minute break and those dried, so I had to go back and do a second coat over those areas specifically to hide that splatter. As I mentioned earlier in this video, I wanted to highlight why I recommend this product over a paint or a solid stain. Specifically for a paint, if a thick coat is applied and if moisture is able to get beneath the paint, that thick layer can actually prevent the moisture from escaping and can actually cause the wood to rot. For a solid stain, although they are known for strong UV protection, when they come to end of life, they are known to peel and crack. So to apply a new product, you're going to need to completely sand off that old layer before applying something new. And this can be very time consuming and costly. Now the reason I went with a transparent product is because it will be lower maintenance to preserve in the future. Because it's wood penetrating, it will not peel or crack, so to apply a new layer, all I'll need to do is pressure wash off the surface and then apply a new coat. You should not need to do any sort of sanding, and this is because a sealer can go on top of another sealer, but a stain cannot go over top of a previous stain. You'll notice at the end of the video, the wood doesn't appear shiny because the product has actually sunk into the wood. However, solid stains and paint will give a wood a more shiny finish because it's only a top coat product. One downside of a transparent stain there are fewer colors that they come in because there are less tinting a solid with a transparent stain. So some folks may look at a semi-solid stain. However, I found the cracking and peeling to also be true when it comes to semi-solid stains. So I recommend a transparent stain over those, and hopefully you're able to find a color that you like. Another thing to keep in mind are transparent stains do typically wear faster than solid stains. However, because it's less maintenance to reapply a second coat, I found this to be a good trade-off, and I do really enjoy seeing the wood grain through the stain, so for me it was definitely worth it. I won't show you the entire application process, but in total it took me about 3 to 4 hours to get my entire deck coated, and after that time, this is how it came out. I'm a huge fan of this shade of brown, and seeing that wood grain, I really think it brought my deck back to life, not only visually but also functionally as well, knowing that that wood penetrating sealer is going to protect it for years to come. If you're a fan of this shade of brown as well, it's called Mountain Cedar, and I'll leave a product link in my description in case you want to pick it up. Now these are the results for the first day, but after letting this dry for about 24 hours, I did go back and look for any lighter spots and did a quick touch up with another application of product. A few days after completing this job, we had a big rainstorm, and as you can see, the deck held up great. You can see how water repellent the finish is and how easily that water is actually beating off the deck. As a fun experiment, I took my leaf blower and blew the water to see what would happen, and as you can see, the water is blowing right off. So it's safe to say I'm extremely pleased with how this project turned out, not only visually, but technically as well. Here's a quick side-by-side to illustrate the major transformation this deck has gone through. In case you want to perform this job yourself, I've linked all the products I used in this video in the description box, so feel free to check that out. That's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it and learned a few things if you're planning to take on this project yourself. Thanks for watching, and this is Michael's House signing off. Thanks. As promised, here are some bonus clips of me pressure washing the deck.